This doesn't count for dinner. There's another.
Okay, I don't know how to test this, but I think it's working.
Okay.
Okay, just gonna leave it.
Thank
Dun,
you,
dun,
Ann.
dun.
For about
I'll go online and see if I
45
see
minutes,
it.
I was miserable.
That'll be the test.
It was too rugged.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what like step was.
Okay, we ready then? All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:17. We have just enough people here. We also have Jessica on Zoom.
Yep.
Which I think makes it 11 total. I saw a voucher going around today. Hopefully everybody's getting to those and signing them. And public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none. Approval of minutes from March 11th, 2024. Have you a motion?
Second.
Tyson, Susan. Motion is second. Are any questions or discussion? No? All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you, Jessica. All
She
right.
did it right.
Yeah. Reports and updates. Superintendent's report.
I get to do 2 reports today, so, well, thank you all for coming on the eclipse day. I appreciate it. I know it was kind of odd. Everyone sort of, you know, here, it was very interesting, but I had a chance to watch it. So, I'd like to sort of start off, like I shared at the last meeting, all of our meetings, we usually share our district promise, and that is to interrupt educational inequities and create schools where every child and staff member thrives one conversation at a time. Our April enrollment for the district is at 1,418 students. That's down 1 from our March numbers. And staffing update, this is the beginning of our hiring season, and there have been some changes. We've actually done some hiring at some of our schools for our grade school teachers and regular ed. There were some openings there. Some special ed teachers have been hired. We have some speech and language pathologists that have been hired, but we still need another one at one of our schools. In terms of bus drivers, we have started a program where we have some bus drivers that are taking a class that when we put out there that we would pay for the education, and some of them are working through either a 1-day, depending on what their licensure were, to be able to get to the point where potentially having some bus drivers for some of our schools that are losing bus drivers due to retirement. So we have our fingers crossed that we might be in a good place when next year comes around in terms of our drivers after a year of a lot of difficulties. So, and then coaches, substitute teachers, and an assistant cook position are still out there. Our directors of teaching and learning attended the UMO teaching job fair last Friday. I haven't had a chance to talk with them about sort of how that went, but as you know, we've got a pretty good list from Farmington, and I'll be intrigued to see what we received on Friday. And again, my update is linked on the agenda on the for the AOS, and so folks can go and click on the highlighted blue to sort of see what opportunities there are in the district.
At least it doesn't work for me.
It's not working?
It's not. I don't have access.
Okay.
I think you just have to change the permissions.
Okay, I will do that. Thanks for.
Yeah.
School highlights. I had an opportunity at the high school to, over this last month, to see the one-act play, and that was amazing. I had a really good time watching the students act. It was a great performance. They did a wonderful job. And in being around at the school, of course, there's a lot of March Madness information going on, whether it's basketball, and here at the high school they have March Madness for mammals. And you'll have to go up to the stairway over by the science wing. It's really interesting in terms of, it's a collection of, and I may get it wrong, of identifying animals and then whether or not where they are meeting to have this battle might impact what happens, and there's a score rating. It's quite interesting, and you can go and see how the animals, and I forgot to look today to see, who was coming out on top as they go through the bracket, but I thought that was interesting. We had our, as you have heard at some of your board meetings, the professional day, and one of the things I wanted to highlight is the importance of one of the high school students that is on the restorative board, and he made the specific comment that the restorative process isn't an after process, it's an entire process, and spoke very clearly about the importance of building community, and that ties very nicely with the work of the responsive classroom that our elementary schools are doing, and that the way to build community and belonging and to help support, when you look at that health survey, what are some of the things that you're doing? Some of it's not a specific program or something that you go to, it's how you build a culture of your school. And I think one of the things that we have been working on for the last couple of years in terms of tier 1 practices and MTSS is taking a look at that social emotional learning aspect, starting it with a really heavy use of the responsive classroom and getting folks trained to that, and then bringing through to restorative practices in the high school. Those are the things that make systemic difference. And so, it was really interesting to have a senior who's on the restorative board make that comment, which is so true, to be able to tell teachers that this is really important work and needs to continue. I was able to see the show choir performances on Friday night that they did here at the school, seeing the high school do theirs. And I don't know why, Pematic, I know that it was a small group, but boy, they did a great job with the Moulin Rouge. They sang their hearts out. I was like, they should have gone to Ellsworth. They did a really nice job, and all the groups did. But the fact that they sort of started with saying, well, we've been working on it and trying really hard, and they knocked it out of the park on Friday night. So good for them. And the 8th grade students had their step-up day here at the high school. Over at the Ashley Bryan School, they had their beach cleanup with the Maine Coast Mission and the Island Institute. The bird of the week was the speckled Sussex. That was one of the students said, could I bring my chicken for bird of the week? And Gloria said, absolutely. And then they did a little write-up. If you look at their newsletter on the speckled Sussex, they've been doing some science work on buoyancy, and they had their first all-school lunch. Usually the students on the outer islands, particularly Frenchboro and Cranberry, sort of either go home or they have a little box lunch. But this was a lunch that the students did, and they had a spaghetti and meatball lunch a couple of weeks ago. Out on Frenchboro, continuing to prepare for their TLC trip at Scudic and a play that they will be performing. They'll be participating in the Vintage Classroom the next time they're off island. And one of the things that they do is they invite, and they do this on Cranberry in the springtime, any students who would be entering kindergarten next year, they invite those little pre-Kers to come in and have a little experience with school, and they'll be doing that as we move through the rest of the year. Over at Connors Emerson, they have their family STEAM night that is up and coming. In 6th grade, they've been doing some geology studies, and they've made models of various Earth systems. And they had a former CES alum come and do an author visit with the 4th grade. Over at the Trenton School, they had Deputy Greg Malhut visited kindergarten and read to students. And if you looked at their Facebook post from the Sheriff's Department, it was like a little kind of a detective story in describing his visit. And they had some really beautiful pictures of him sitting with the kids and reading stories. 5th and 6th graders went to the Challenger Learning Center up in Bangor, and they have their Arts Week that is coming up at the end of April after vacation, and they do a variety of pieces of inviting artists to the school and then sending some kids over to Art Waves to do projects. And they had an author's visit from Island Readers and Writers. And over at Pematic, again, I highlighted the show choir performance for Moulin Rouge. The jazz band, which is a combined Tremont-Pematic group, earned a silver medal at the States, so congratulations to them. In the pre-K classroom, they have a mobile kitchen and a little convection oven, and they made zucchini bread, and they all liked it. Surprise, surprise, zucchini can be tasty. During the Arts Week over at Pematic, they had last week, I believe it was, I saw some pictures of the kindergartners, and they had made these little dioramas, and they were also very proud of pieces that they made. Over at Swans Island, and the way that they do some of their newsletters is they highlight specific areas, and this past week I thought it would be interesting to highlight some of the things that they're doing in their specials classes. So they have Spanish, and they're learning vocabulary through weather and card games and song. The middle schoolers took their guidance counselor. She's been working hard on screen time and things like that, and about what other things you can do. And she had never been to a particular cove, Solomon's Cove, and so they did a hike there and got to show off a little bit of their island to her. They've been playing volleyball in PE class. They did a whole school visit to Volta, so staff and students went and climbed the indoor climbing wall. They made dancing robots over in tech class with Mr. Dye, and in music, there's been quite a water theme, and been singing sea shanties. Over in Tremont this morning, I went over. They had their ribbon cutting for the new library space. When they introduced pre-K to the school, they had to put the library as they were moving things around, and that has taken quite a lot of effort by a lot of people to get that space open. But today it was beautiful. They had everybody come out, and because it was an eclipse day, it was a sunny day, they had a little bit of sun-kissed orange soda to drink with their sun chips. And I can't remember the song that Principal True brought up on a little radio outside, but it was quite cute. It was a sun song. And so it all had the theme. Some 6th grade students visited Provenders as they are learning some French vocabulary and learning about inspired dishes. 7th graders were learning CPR, and the jazz band won the silver medal at Trenton Pematic. And over in Mount Desert, they have their Arts Week coming up. Spring track has started, and I was over there, and they were having track, and it was funny, all the students were in their gear, they had shorts on. It was a little cold out, and the coaches were all bundled up and staying warm. And I wanted to say something. I was like, hey, you guys should be running around and staying warm that way. They had Down East Restorative Justice has been going to the school there and helping to inform the middle school restorative process. And part of that, connecting the middle school with the high school, will be a process that we will do as we sort of spread those practices into our middle schools. And their jazz band scored the highest in their division over at States, and then they had multiple members score 1s on their individual solos and a couple master musicianship awards. So a lot of exciting things happening through our district at all of our schools. It's exciting to either read about it in their newsletters or when I'm there to be able to see it. In terms of budgets, you all saw we did get our Blue Cross Blue Shield rate increase at 9.43, so that's bumping right up to our 10%, and we budgeted that for all of our schools. So unfortunately, we won't have any extra carryover in terms of our insurance, in terms of the rate increase. And so, that happens. As Matt had said, we had the budget meeting for the high school, and that had passed. So now we're awaiting our series of town meetings that'll be coming up through the month of May and into June. The last town meeting is on Frenchboro in the middle of June. And for staff highlights, I wanted to highlight Julie Harris. She's the Tremont Food Service Director, and she did a vegetable March Madness bracket. And actually, when the food service folks were here going to all of our schools at the state level, he took a picture of it and then put it on the state's website for their weekly newsletter of food service. So hats off to Julie. I was visiting one day a couple of weeks ago, and it was broccoli against turnip, and I was sure turnip was going to make it, but broccoli has sort of been winning out along the bracket. Apparently it's tastier. I wanted to highlight Charlie Johnson and Philippa Adam here at the high school, both visual art teachers. They will be presenting at the Maine Art Education Association Spring Concert. And Charlie will be doing a presentation on the intersection of art and AI, and Philippa will be doing supporting inclusivity in the classroom. Also, Tremont Tanya Prentice, she is going to be the Teacher at Sea program. It's part of a NOAA monitoring survey. She's going to be going out on the ship, the Henry Bigelow, and doing some studies of ecosystem studies, within the Northeast. And so she'll bring that work back to not only her fellow science teachers, but also her students. And recent retirements, and Matt mentioned one of them, and Sally Merchant, who's been in ed tech here for 20 years, will be moving on as well. So, people making changes and going on to their next step in life. For the MDI RSS as a whole, our update, we had our directors of teaching and learning, Julie and Rhonda, and Heather Dorr and Mariah Simpson over at MDS went to the School Redesign and Action Conference. It's put on by the Great Schools Partnership, and we have been working with the Great Schools Partnership as part of our work as administrators in strengthening what we do, and taking away some of the, and then some of the teachers and some of the work that they're doing in terms of conferencing and long-range planning. And so they all went down to the conference in Portland and are bringing back information to share with teachers and administrators. Matt had talked about our school resource officer. Tim Bland is moving on from his post at the Bar Harbor and Mount Desert Police Department. And I just have to say, I was part of the administrative team when I was in Bar Harbor that brought Tim to that school. And when we started, it was just Bar Harbor, and he has played a really large role in the lives of not only children but also staff in terms of being a real mentor to people when they needed someone to talk to and to lean on. And like Matt said, that we're going to be thoughtful in our approach and working with the folks in Bar Harbor and making sure that we have a thoughtful process on what a replacement might look like. And I've already met with the administrative team that has Tim in their schools to sort of talk about, what are we looking for, and then we will go meet with David Kearns and then start that process, because it's a sort of hugely important role, but it also takes a very special person. But Tim has done a wonderful job and has been outside, I think, a bright light for our schools in starting that process here. So. And I'll shift a little bit to the April note. It was linked so you could sort of see it, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things that were going on. And part of the bigger work that that Rhonda has been doing has been sort of the K-4 standards review in reading and in math. And in particular, there were two groups, the reading group and the math group. Teachers were nominated by their peers to sort of work in these smaller groups to take a look at the foundation standards and compare those to the updated learning results. And they worked to sort of clarify some of the language and see where there needed to be shifts. And they clarified some of the pieces in terms of adopting language that was a little bit better to understand, not only will be for parents, but also for teachers, where you have standards that are addressed, and those would be the ones that students would hear in the classroom that might be the building blocks for standards that are assessed. And so that language is going to be sort of throughout to have a better understanding of where you do the light touch, what are your building block standards, and what are your assessed standards. Teachers then provided feedback in sessions, both written when the standards went out, and then there were meet sessions where they could join after school and sort of talk about and sort of give some feedback on what was going to be forward. And so the next steps are adding those assessed standards now that that feedback has been brought back, and then getting those into Schoologies so that teachers can more easily track student progress as well as parents, and to sort of put what the power of Schoology, sort of to use. And so those building blocks are really important. So that work has gone on for a good part of this year, and sort of taking a look at those early standards. And reorganization, we have a meeting coming up on Wednesday. The focus of that meeting will be sort of where we've been and where we hope to go. So we'll be identifying to the RPC, the model that, we're interested, but also to sort of fill them in on all the decisions and the work that not only this board, but boards before you have made in this process, and so that we all are starting at the same page. And I want to read sort of that sort of preamble, because I think that's really important as we move forward with the organization, and is that our effort is to reorganize our current structure from a collection of individual schools into a coherent and more equitable model to better serve our students and educators. It makes sense to look at how we can provide the best education for everyone with our collective resources. The current organization creates separate and unequal budgets that lead to disparities in educational programming and opportunities, and is redundant and costly to taxpayers. I think our biggest piece, and I'll reiterate this at our meetings as we meet, and then when we go out into the community to talk about our reorganization, is our focus is on kids. And a recognition is that as they are coming into this high school, they need to have similar experiences, so that it's not because of that they're lacking because of where they live in those communities that may not be able to support certain programming. So that's really important. And again, I'll double check that link to make sure as I make new versions of my reports that everything crosses over. And you can go to the district website and sort of see information that we have collected on models and things that we have put in the paper. And then finally, the school board corner. You guys like to keep it, so I'm leaving it as that name. And I thought it would be timely, is that this is a time of year where folks are thinking about running for the school board. And the Maine School Board Association actually put out a really nice document in terms of helping people identify what your role might be. And so what I put together here is from the Maine School Board Association and their information that they put out to folks about who are thinking about running. And so what would you need to know? Well, first, you don't necessarily need a background in government or public education or public policy, but you should have an interest in thinking about what's best for kids. And so in this piece that they put out, they're like, well, you should ask yourself the following questions. And one of those would be, well, why are you running? Is it on a specific issue? And in terms of the experience from the Maine School Board Association, they shared that if you're just running for a specific issue, you might find that the work doesn't line up with your reasonings and might be unfulfilling. If you have an agenda, you might likely be disappointed. And the reasons are, your role as a board is to look at the overall quality of education. And so if your reasoning is that you want to help make decisions that are good for all kids, and it's important to recognize that the authority that you have as a board is derived from the Maine legislature, not from the folks who voted for you. And in the words of a sitting Maine school board member, if you're focused on one thing, you'll miss the big picture. An idea of the time commitment. Here, they speak to the point that you need to be prepared to commit the time and come in after an eclipse and still take part in this lovely process. That there is training provided, and some of that would come from me, and some of that would come from our association with the Maine School Boards Association. And here in our current organization, you not only sit on the local board, you also sit on an AOS board, you sit on a high school board, and you might be part of a local committee that might be created from your school board, or it might be something that comes from the district board. And if elected, whom do I represent? Once you are elected, you become part of a governing team. It's important that a school board is a governing board, it's not a representative board. And so you help make decisions on policy in terms of running the school, rather than sort of representing the community that you come from. The idea that individual members don't hold any authority, you hold authority as a team, and that's where your authority and responsibilities reside. And And members represent the school as a unit, not the municipality that elected them. And while there is fiscal responsibility to municipality, the broader representation is to the needs of all of the students. That's a really tough line as a board member, and definitely it's understood. But in the end, you're thinking about what's in the needs of the students. And ultimately, any board member would share that the role is meaningful and rewarding. And so if you know people who are going to be running in the coming weeks for school boards, you can share this slide with them so they can sort of take a look at it, and they can always call in the office and talk to me, or you can send them off to your various board members. But as I look around, a lot of you have been doing this for a while, and it wouldn't be rewarding, and you wouldn't like it if you weren't always coming back. So thank you for your service. And that's my report.
Any questions?
I just have one comment. Was there an opportunity for someone to talk to Tim and thank him, or represent that thanks from, because it was a kind of a quick departure, so I don't think he's been so busy, hasn't been at schools and things like that.
It's been happening, like you said, it's kind of been like drip drip. And so when he was here and people learned, they were talking to him, there is going to be a lunch get together at the police department tomorrow, and I plan on going over as sort of a formal thank you to him for that. And but it's been mostly when he's been in the various schools, just that kind of
the kids have
congratulation.
been able to talk to, like.
Yes, yeah.
All right, thank you. And we have discussion items. First reading revisions to policy GCSA-R, employee and independent contractors' use of school-issued devices and the internet use rules, acceptable use policy.
This policy was put together collectively with the tech team, and it came from pieces from a variety of schools and resources. And the main thing that they were trying to improve on is, number one, the simple fact of making sure everyone is included, meaning independent contractors is in the title, and identifying that we are no longer just using computers as our ways of educating, communicating. There's also phones and other devices that are there, and they just wanted to encompass all of that. They also wanted to identify some really important information around freedom of information, and also the responsibilities in terms of how you act as a professional within the sphere of social media. So that is addressed in this policy. And so we spent some time at the policy committee. We actually invited them, we reviewed it, had some questions, invited them back to sort of talk a little bit more about some of the reasonings in some of their pieces, and felt comfortable of moving this forward for you all to take a look at and ask any questions on before it comes up for any vote. For me particularly, I think it's one of the pieces here that's really important is that sort of social media piece, where in our old policy we didn't really address that. Just in the sense of a recognition that your role as an educator within a school, you're kind of elevated and you are out in the community more, and it's important to recognize that role and how what you say and do may impact your role within the classroom. And that's that's a tightrope to walk. But I guess like when you talk to folks who are stars in any kind of sports, it's sort of that they're elevated, and so people look up to them, and so your behavior means something. And I think that's the same for educators and communities. So it was important to sort of be able to point those out and have that as part of the process as people come into our schools, and they understand those aspects, particularly around the use of technology.
Discussion or questions? This will come back next time, so it'll be one of our future agenda items.
And you could always ask, even after this, this time, you will need clarification.
I just have one. Who are the, do we have like a lot of independent contractors? Like who are we talking about?
Independent contractors would be folks that come in and do physical therapy. Sometimes we have
Oh, okay.
OTs that are independent
I
contractors.
was thinking like carpenters.
Sometimes we
have,
sometimes we have special ed teachers who are, so oftentimes we'll have people that come in here into the school, and it's important for them to sort of, understand some of the
Got it.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, we had an SLP recently.
Understood.
Okay. Nothing else. Action items. Second reading and adoption of revisions to policy GCSA, employee independent contractors. They're very similar, right?
This is the
GCSA,
policy, and then the
okay.
other one is the procedures and sort of the details of it. So this is
Okay.
the,
GCSA, employee and independent contractors use school-issued devices and the internet safety policy.
so, and the big changes, I think we spoke about it last time, was sort of the addition of the, sort of the guiding principles in terms of the use of technology within our schools. And again, sort of clarifying that when we talk about technology, we're talking about not only the devices, but also the network and all of those pieces that are part of that.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Motion and second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Jessica?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that a nudge?
Yeah, I didn't know if it.
It's midnight.
Wake up.
Okay. Any other business? And future agenda items, we have report on instructional time for May. We'll be seeing our discussion item come back for a vote on the GCSA-R. Is there any other?
There'll probably be a couple other policies on GBEB staff conduct. Kind of came out of some of the technology work. Right now, our policy there talks a lot about staff conduct with students, staff conduct, but there's general staff conduct, and so it's important to be able to put some identifiers on responsibility and respect of those things that we wanted to share. So we'll probably have something around that, and then we may have attendance policy revisions.
Student attendance?
Yes, it's particularly around the changes in the laws, not necessarily on truancy, but on chronic absenteeism. Thank you, Selena. I am sending a team right now of elementary folks are going down to see Lynn Lyons, who is an expert on anxiety, and she's doing a conference on school avoidance, and it ties really closely to some of the reasons why there might be, there's a lot of reasons for chronic absenteeism, but recently that idea of anxiety laden is a big one. So she's doing, going to provide tools for elementary schools and how you approach that, and then she's going to do one for middle and high schools, and then I'll send folks to that, and we're going to use that. Based on that information, we'll sort of build out our district-wide approach, sort of in line to not only the truancy piece, but also the chronic absenteeism piece. And so that's why that might maybe come up in June, or it might come up in September, because I want to make sure that the teams have gone to those places and then come back with the information that we need, and then we'll build our plan around how we address both truancy and chronic absenteeism and making sure that all of our building administrators have the tools to sort of help with those as we go through that process.
All right, and any public comment? Is anyone here from the public? Our next meeting is Monday, May 13th, probably at 6, right after the high school meeting. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor? Jessica?
Yes.
Jessica, thank you.
Night, Jessica.
Anytime. See you later.
All right, see you later.
Bye-bye.
Wait, did you just come back? And then I saw you normally when I write something down. Oh, so you're like, oh, that was yesterday.